explaining some of my favorite downward dog things. So, but we'll start like we usually do. Seated comfortably onto both sit bones with the weight distributed equally right and left and right in the middle of the pelvis. So we can relate that to the downward dog shape, to Adho Mukha Svavasana or Mukhasana, in that it's a triangular shape. So let's picture the triangular shape, in this case of the pelvis and the two legs resting on the ground. And we'll make a pyramid, like a beautiful Egyptian pyramid, where also that lower base of support reaches up into the sky into a point, the top of the head, or even above it, reaching a height. Nice and wide and strong and stable at the base, which is also a nice quality of downward facing dog. And then lifting up through the whole shape from that width to a point above us. Sometimes it helps to envision actually hanging even from that point down towards the ground and reversing our whole perspective on the shape. Like our head is just suspended there, and then the body hangs down from that point. And that's another thing in dog that helps. As we breathe, we're going to start moving our arms, but I'll chat. It helps if we shift our perspective also from our hands and feet and base of support to the uplifted part, the tail or the sit bones, the thigh bones, depending on what descriptions you follow, what teachers you hear. Inhaling at your own speed to lift up. And when you're ready, we'll exhale and lengthen through one side and the other. So, relating to our little theme of the day, how to make your downward dog happy. That's downward dog is completely symmetrical until we take three-legged dog. We lift up a leg. So here we'll lift up an arm and reach it into the sky. And it changed the whole shape again. Reaching up. All of a sudden, one side is more supporting and the other side is stretching a bunch. Uplifted. When you're ready, we'll twist over to one side with the exhalation. There are sort of twisty variations on downward dog you can do. They end up also being tripods rather than four-footed. But I find them extra, extra challenging because, as said, downward dog for me is still in itself a very effective and effortful pose. Challenging, but in a way that feels really good afterwards. Entering. So when you're evened out, twisting side to side, we'll settle back down into a simple seat. And it can be helpful to think about the rib cage and spine in relationship to the tail and head in downward dog. The legs stretch long in the upper body too. I'm doing cat and cow here. So a cat and cow to warm up the front and back of the body. So there's a lot of core work involved, but as I was saying, it can be sometimes hard to find what is long through the arms and the whole torso. Sometimes we go into um, a really arched back in one way or the other. The spine is rounded. So in a simpler shape and seated position here, simple seat, we're going to explore the extremes of a whole kreuz or arch back, and then a rounded cat back. And then what is the in-between position, right? In the center, where the spine, with its natural curves, has a long shape from the crown of the head through the neck, shoulders, and rib cage. So even as we flip the orientation into all fours next and then into downward dog, the rib cage is not going to splay out to the front too much, and it's also not going to curve in at the chest. We'll stay right like this as we extend into our dog. But first, as I said, into all fours. Let's go ahead and go there. Because as I said, we're going to explore it in a whole bunch of different ways. And then we'll have some yummy palate cleansers in between as usual, so that this position doesn't become our nightmare. It's not to do it too much, exactly. And part of a lot of the things I was reading and looking at that are about downward dog, of course, and people's experiences of it and how to adapt it to different bodies is the idea that for some people and then some days they're not going to want to do like classic downward dog or the quote, the full pose at all, which is also fine. You can always decide to come to all fours instead, to come to child's pose instead. I like to say you can come to legs up the wall instead because you still get an inversion and you still get a folding, so a lengthening in the legs and in the upper body, but have it be a completely relaxed and not strenuous shape for days or folks where that's what they like to do. We also have one more L shape, seated L shape, which also gives you the idea because if we can't make a 90-degree angle comfortably seated, something's happening in the lower back, for example, and it's curving in, or we need to bend our knees. We have some tightness in the back of the legs. That's probably also going to be something we experience in downward dog. So sometimes just a seated forward fold can help warm up or can be the pose, staff pose, it's called, this one, even with blocks under it. But let's go ahead and come to all fours, like I said. And there, explore a long spine, tabletop like, with our upper body parallel to the floor. And that nice four-footed position already happening with equal distribution of weight on the right and left hand, pressing strongly through the hands, fingertips, and then the same on the back part of the shape over the knees, over the toes, and the feet. So distributing our weight over as much surface as we can in all fours. Feeling strong and grounded is a wonderful strength of this pose. And then we'll explore some cat and cow action. Again, here, finding the extreme arch, lifting head and tail, and passing through neutral to reverse. Keeping our focus, even as we explore some different variations today, on the breath. And if our breath gets too labored, difficult, we're holding it. Maybe that's not the right version of the shape for you today. So opt out and again choose child's pose, all fours, or legs up the wall. So here we're already bearing weight in the hands and wrists though. So if they need a break at any time, we can also stretch the wrists. Important to take good care of the wrists in downward dog and not dump our weight into that particular joint. And also not to lock into the elbows. So have a nice soft bend in the elbows and let our strong upper body, triceps muscles and the side here, the serratus muscles hold us. Our core and the psoas muscle actually is very active in downward dog too. And then come back to the center, right into neutral. Back to a flat back. And we can always swing the hip side to side. Ooh, to warm up the hips and release the lower back. Great. So there are a bunch of different ways that are describing the right distance of your hands and your feet from each other in downward dog. I think, and there's other teachers that say, the body finds the right distance. You know, you are your own best teacher as far as what is your correct stance. By all means, explore different ones, but I think it's more important to try out different widths and feel how that affects the body than to say, okay, we're going to put the hands right next to the shoulders. We're going to lay onto the belly. We're going to press to all fours. We tuck the toes under, and that's the correct distance, right? So that is one way to do it and not wrong. But you know already that that's not how I usually teach. We walk out to whatever distance feels comfortable and tuck the toes under and send the hips up to the sky with a bend in the knee and a bend in the elbows. And then walk it in or out and through from foot to foot. That is a wonderful way to get in that I often read and hear is with the hands strongly pressing and the tail sending up to tread through the feet right and left, letting one heel drop towards the floor and the other one lift up, side to side. And in our own yoga practice, we can do this as many times as we want. Until we feel satisfied. And then we can experiment with letting both heels fall down to the ground while the tail or the buttocks lift the sit bones and the seat. Oh, but the first one, especially of the day, can be a big intensive stretch. So let's just see how it's going. And then slowly lower the knees back down to the ground underneath the hips, and we'll bring the tops of the feet back to the floor and sit back. We can start in a kneeling position. So sometimes it's good, or it's always good to take a breath in between that inversion and then into another shape, either a back bend or into another forward bend here, child's pose. So letting the upper body drape over so that the rib cage rest is onto or between the thighs. Balasana is a lovely Sanskrit word. I can easily remember the child's pose because it does look like a ball, really kind of an opposite shape from downward dog. Even though we're folded in the hips here, the upper body may round. The knees are fully bent. We can let every muscle relax. And then with an inhale, we'll bring our hands underneath the shoulders, which is a lovely place from which to lengthen the spine. So that can be a nice impulse to stretch into a long spine in downward dog or in seated, or then into all fours. So from all fours, this time we're going to show another variation of a dog, happy little dog, which is puppy pose. So I think I'll actually walk my knees back a little bit because in this shape, we don't end up stepping on the feet. We just create a similar shape to downward dog in the upper body, reaching the arms forward and the head hangs down, just as relaxed. And the tail sends up, but we let the heart fall towards the floor, opening up the chest. Nice way to practice the relaxed head and neck, supporting upper body and lower body. Couple few breaths, and then we'll roll back up to bring our hands under the shoulders to all fours. So we'll walk our hands back in, lift the upper body back up, and walk forward. We'll lay all the way onto the belly for a moment. For this, we can make a pillow with one palm on top of the other. I just rest a cheek. Getting completely grounded through the whole front body, chest, pelvis, legs, and feet. And then bringing the hands back underneath the shoulders. Our elbows will close in towards the upper body, towards a chaturanga type of, I always think of it like a grasshopper leg pose. And we'll roll up into a baby cobra or a full-on snake. A couple breaths coming up and with the exhale coming down. Getting mobility in the shoulders and heart, neck. And oftentimes we, in a sun salutation, will be passing through a cobra and also through a downward facing dog. So we'll be pressing from the uplifted heart and down, and then pressing into knees, chest, chin, or all fours, and then continuing the lift of the tail and walking the feet into downward dog. So we'll go ahead and when you're ready, come up through those shapes. And then again, we'll tread through the feet. We'll even exaggerate that a little bit this time. And keeping equal weight on both hands, we'll shift through the feet, twisting the knees and toes in one direction. And then inhale. So this is one of the twisty variations and dynamic variations of downward dog. Sometimes I get a little more space or a little pop out of the lower back. Twist, very good core training. 2 or 3 or more.
And then coming back into a lifted tail position with equal weight on the hands and the feet. I'm inviting the first prop variation of downward dog of the day. So either with blocks underneath the heels, let's do underneath the heels, like a high heel, or with, I have a folded like a Turkish towel or blanket, or folded like a bath towel, beach towel sometimes works. We're gonna just lift the heels up. Sometimes, for me anyway, it's shortness in the lower leg and the Achilles tendon that makes it so the heels can't ground down into the floor with a long lower back. So instead, the lower back is curved in order to get the heels down, you know what I mean? And then we look like a very sort of sad and embarrassed dog rather than a happy, proud uptail dog that we're going for. So I'm gonna actually use the blanket briefly, but then maybe also blocks. And when one has a partner or a teacher to practice with, what this is simulating is we can also get help from them to shift the weight back towards the heels, either pressing the heels down to the floor or pulling back at the fold in the thighs. Can help us get lightness in the hands and groundedness in the feet. Bending the knees certainly can help adjusting the width of our stance. So let's see if I can get my lower back nice and long and not too heavy in the hands and the head relaxed. So I tucked in my shirt so I can hang and not lose lose my shirt. Feels pretty good, but there's still a pretty big stretch happening at the top of the thigh. So I'm just going to switch out the prop. Oh, a bolster or a pillow could work too. Yes, so there's less stretch in the lower leg. Woo! That might be too much, but wow, do the hips feel upraised and the hands light. Yeah, I think that's too much, but depending on the length of our arms and our own legs, our mileage may vary. Yes, or your partner could also press between the shoulder blades and along the spine to help lift. So all of those things bringing about that sense of groundedness through feet and hands, but not like we're crushing them there. We could remove any and lightness through the pelvis and tail, length through upper body and lower body. Wonderful. Okay, let's lower the knees slowly down to the ground and swing the legs around or cross them over. Just a moment of the complete inversion of a downward dog, which is not any simpler at all, but is fun to throw into the mix because we have also been doing this lately, and it is the boat pose. So just for a little palate cleanser here, sitting back. We imagine that triangle between knees and shoulders, and it's sort of between actually the tailbone and the sit bone. So on the fleshy bit, long spine, long legs. Maybe they're so long they're extending. Maybe not. Maybe one or the other wishes to stretch. The arms could reach out. It's quite hard to try to create the arm. I notice my back is curving, so that doesn't really work, but it's fun to try to do a complete inversion of downward dog. In boat. Woo! And then let's let the feet drop onto the ground and do a seated child's pose variation. Folding in. Ooh, I even have a little cramp in my hip. So if that's happening to you, swing the legs side to side. The hip flexor was really flexing. And then folding in to like a sleepy little dog. We get to sometimes be that very outgoing, happy-go-lucky, uptail dog, but then balance it with lots of naps, plenty of rest. Taking our time, slowly rolling up through the spine. Let's go ahead and walk our legs forward towards an L shape and do a seated forward fold. As I was mentioning before, that staff pose being a dog-like pose on the way to a seated forward fold. Get a nice non-balancing version of that stretch to the upper backs of the legs. We could bring a prop here and rest a head or chest onto a pillow or block. Or if it's free hanging, well, just look a little bit side to side to make sure we're relaxing in the neck and shoulders. All the way through the length of the neck, the back of the head. In this case, letting gravity open up the backs of the legs and the back of the spine. Inhale, we'll walk the hands back in and swing the legs around or cross them over. And walk on back to all fours. And I'll bring the blocks up to the front of the mat and have them ready there for the next bit of fun. So you can imagine if we were extending the heels off the ground to feel grounded. In the other variation here, we're going to bring length to the hands and more space there. I love this one. So starting in all fours, finding the middle and tucking the toes under, pressing into the whole of the hands and every toe to lift the hips. Adjusting the width, but then maybe again, if we're taking a block under each hand. Now, whoo, creating more length to the arms, lifts the hips up quite a lot in the back. Definitely helps me bring the heels down onto the floor with a long lower back and without arching through the upper back or opening up through the ribs. Feel really long in the upper body, arms and legs. But if it's not your cup of tea, of course, adjust or come on down. Yeah, so if we do find a variation, continue to explore variations until one works a bit better. It opens the door to being able to stay a little bit longer and possibly receive even more benefits of the pose. But we're not going to overdo it. Definitely listen in to the feedback of the body, and whenever you're ready, softly return the knees to the ground. And the hands could stay on the block so we can move them to the side. And we're going to take more of a loosey little bulldog, little French bulldog shake. Here this time in the middle, wagging the tail, and that will wag the shoulders and head. Letting everything shake out. And resting for a breath or two in child's pose. Maybe it's an extended child's pose with wide knees and reaching arms. Or maybe we come on back to a classic child's pose, Mukhasana, whatever one that you found Soothing and comforting, allowing the attention to come completely back to the breath. Nice. When you're ready, bring your hands underneath the shoulders again and inhale to extend. Lift up the head and spine and walk to all fours. I discussed the wrist earlier, preparing the wrists for downward dog. And also recovering maybe with some lower arm stretches. The elbows staying soft and not locking out. The shoulder action, because of that pressure, creates space here at the side body. And sometimes we might find that downward dog really relieves our shoulder tension, and sometimes we might find that it exaggerates it, so we have to listen in. And for that reason, I'm also going to do a little shoulder stretch here. Since we're in all four, let's keep the left hand planted and the right arm open up wide to the side, or maybe even up high like a wing with the inhale. And then exhale to thread the arm through underneath, resting onto the tricep, onto the side of the head. We can continue to use that left hand pressure into the floor. Ooh, to open up the back of that wing between the shoulder blades. And here, like in downward dog, we also check in on the back body, the equal distribution of the weight between the two legs. So the twist is in the upper body. And the legs will hold strong for a couple breaths. And then we'll inhale, come back to weight on both palms of the hands. And returning the favor, we'll press through the right hand. The left will lift up. Opening our chest muscles here too. Bonus chest opener. And then we'll thread through. And the left hand reaching. We'll rest onto that left shoulder, head. Head and neck relaxed as those stretches in that shoulder blade, center of the upper back area. For many of us, a little problem area. And then we'll inhale, press back up through the hand. Come on back to center. Palate cleanser of the round. We'll keep weight on the two hands and the left knee on the ground. Just draw some circles with that right knee. Releasing through the hip. If you really want to get wild and creative, you could cross over and twist and get dancy with it. Or we can keep it nice and chill and just trace some little circles with the knee and release. Left side similar. So this is our practice for three-legged dog where we have a little bit more support from that floor. Our tripod shape with a third of the weight on each hand and on the leg. And if you're getting all wild with those swirls and circles and shapes, that can feel really nice. And then recover. So we have taken blocks under the heels, blocks under the hands, a pillow under the heels potentially, and a boat type of inversion, legs up the wall, inversion. And I think that's that. What is yet to play with in terms of
variations, I don't think it makes it easier or harder. Maybe it's harder because we're in the tripod position, is three-legged dog. So we're going to go there. But keep in mind that those other adjustments could also be used here. So we could have a little lift under one heel, or we could use the blocks. We can take that information with us. Ooh, I really like the blocks under my hands. I'm going to try that variation, or you could do it like on a step or different ways, and take that into my three-legged dog shape because I feel more stable through the foot and such like. Try with and without the blocks under those other places, or if you can get a partner and get that lift through the pelvis that way, that could be really fun. Yeah. So, once you're ready, I am gonna listen to my own advice and use the blocks for three-legged dog. It gets a little bit more tricky when we're doing a longer yoga sequence, and let's say downward dog is a transition into a warrior position, like in sun salutation or other places, into half moon and other things, but still possible. It just takes a little bit more planning. But we're going to practice this it's not as part of a longer sequence now, just as through an all fours type of shape into all fours downward dog. So connecting through both hands, both feet, and some people can just do downward dog, connect through the heels, the hands, send the tail up, have no problem from the get-go. But like I said, I was never one of them. So choosing the variation that allows you to stay longer, more comfortably in more of an elongated shape without dumping weight into any of the hands and feet with the relaxed head and neck. Is the variation I encourage you to try. And then it might be that it gets easier at that point, and then we don't need those, or we need different kinds of, we find that a different sort of propping helps us take it to the next level, as it were. So sending both hands down and one foot up, the right foot. We're splitting the legs, but the idea isn't to take it as high as we ever could. It's just like the tail, to lift along with the tail up to the sky. So it ends up being more towards that opposite wall, or maybe it's higher or lower. Again, I always offer the toes down variation. That is also one tail position of the three-legged dog. Oh, my hip just popped some more. A really great place to practice circles of the leg or the knee. And also, as said, to step through into a lunge. So I'm just taking a lunge just to play with that. And like triangle we did last week. And stepping back into a plank to go to chaturanga and all that fun stuff. I'm stepping on back to all fours downward dog and shaking my little tail side to side to prepare for the second side three-legged dog. And that would be the left leg lifting up. The toes pointing down tends to help us keep a level pelvis. Woo! But it is also possible to do a variation where we lift our knee up. That could be super fun. Maybe we should do that next before we give up this whole downward dog intensive game. But first, let's lower back down. And set the knees down. And rest. So we can completely rest into child's pose as I've been offering. Or I'm going to rest this time in a seated kneeling position. We could be in Schneidersitz and cross-legged position too. That would be fine. And just open the chest by walking my hands back. like a sort of a sunbathing type of pose. In a future week, we'll have some fun with some other, I think it's gonna get hot again. And then I would love to do like turtle and lizard and snake and all the like not lazy, but the sun basking animals, fish. So coming back up through neutral spine when you're done with that. Child's pose or palate cleanser, a little back bendy fun for bendy fun. Always taking a breath in the center to recenter because with all of this changing of the heart and head relationship, we want to be aware if we're feeling a little lightheaded or anything like that. But yeah, we're gonna call this the last the last downward dog of the practice for today. We'll always come back, but probably not quite so many of them. Unless you find that you love them now, tell me. But hopefully we just find some things like I said for certain days or for along the way that help us enjoy downward dog practice, whether it's an uplift of the heels, of the hands. There's also practices, of course, where they have those yoga swing, like silks, like gymnasts use, that help support like a hammock, the pelvis, and then you get to hang from there. That would be a lovely way to experience downward dog. Let's imagine that hanging like a trapeze from the hip joint down through the hands and legs, hands and feet, arms and legs. Right leg sends up to three-legged dog. And then we'll bring the knee with the bent leg up to the sky. So a variation on a standing split and a really big top of the thigh stretch too. So getting some more quadricep stretch. This is the place also where one could step back and completely invert it into rock star pose. Not required, but just saying three-legged dog is its own transition into lots of fun. And then step on back. Check in with the breath, and the left leg will take that same route, reaching out. And then we'll lift the left knee. The left foot just hangs down. And we get a different kind of stretch through the thighs. And in order to let it fall back behind me into rock star, I need to shift over furniture and lift the heart. All of the fun that one can have with downward dog. And there's even so many more variations that I can't even. But there is a supposedly restorative version of downward dog where in downward dog you bring props underneath your head. So in that inversion, blocks or a bolster or a pillow, or I was thinking a block and the blanket, but then I thought we'd had enough downward dog. But to be able to actually rest the head at that point is also just such a lovely idea. So to get that feedback, but